Firstly, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ramasamy. Dr. Ramasamy is a physician with PhD in cardiology, fellowship in clinical cardiology, international expert in ECP treatment technology, and is the leader and the pioneer in ECP technology and the treatment in India. Yes, doctor. Firstly, I would like to ask, can you brief how this ECP technology was introduced in USA?
Okay. So before I start, I would just like to say what made in US to introduce this new technology called EECP. Because initially we start with, in the management of patient with heart disease, there is already a well established treatments. One is medical management, second is bypass surgery, and then angioplasty. So what is the requirement for introducing a new treatment? Now the reason why in US they look for a new avenue to treat cardiac patient is aging population. When the population start aging, the risk of this procedure on the aged or a elderly individual is very high. So they need something like a less invasive procedure to treat the cardiac patient who are elderly. Second, angioplasty and bypass surgery, both of them are actually a palliative treatment in patient with chronic stable angina. They are not actually a curative. So once you start doing a bypass or angioplasty in an earlier age of the patient, it's not an end of a story. He might develop a symptom again because of the progression of this disease on the coronary vessels, or because of the graft they put is occluded, or the stent they placed is become closed. So they may require to repeat the procedures. So they need some treatment which can be used to prevent these repeat procedures, and also to take patients who are all called inoperable or elderly group. That is how the EECP was first introduced in US in 1992. That's the time it was actually got FDA approved in probably 1996.
Okay, doctor. Then what was your involvement in USA when it was initiating in USA?
Yes. Actually, I went to US around 96, and that's the exact time I think in US EECP was approved by FDA for angina and heart failure. So actually, I was working as a clinical fellow in Portchester University. So I got attracted to this EECP concept because of a non-invasive idea, and also to treat patient in a long period of time to improve the blood supply to the heart muscle without putting them on a bypass surgery and angioplasty. So initially I spoke to the manufacturer, and they recruited me as one of the fellows to do clinical work for them in the University of Portchester and Stony Brook University, New York University. So our first option is it for a Medicare approval. So when EECP is approved by US FDA, the second thing to cross is a medical insurance. So unless the medical insurance approves the treatment, you probably cannot use this treatment in US, because US is all like 100% is medical insurance dependent market. So when we spoke to the pioneer, Dr. John Newey and Lawson, and we sat together and decided that probably we should be able to produce some paper which can show that EECP actually increase the blood flow to the heart muscle. The only way to do is we call as a myocardial perfusion scan. So what we do is we take a perfusion scan, in the sense we inject a dye to find out the area in the heart muscle where there is no blood flow because of the obstruction. Then we do the treatment for 35 days and repeat the same procedure using a dye, and to see whether the area of the heart muscle previously lack of blood supply is whether the blood supply has been restored. So this is a first study we done, and which is published in American College of Cardiology, I think in 2002, and that gives a head-on start for EECP in US, because now it's approved by FDA, and also it has a strong evidence to show that the blood flow can be improved in the heart muscle without bypass and angioplasty. Because that during that period of time, I think in 96, 98, if you want to increase the blood supply to the heart muscle, there are only two interventional procedures available, either it is a bypass or angioplasty. This is the first time we are able to show without bypass and angioplasty, we can still increase the blood supply to the heart muscle. And that's how my involvement in EECP started in US.
Actually, doctor, it says this EECP treatment technology is a kind of a non-invasive treatment system. So, what is the difference in between non-invasive and invasive treatment? The two words are little bit technological. Can you explain it?
Yes, good. See, I mean, the terminology invasive and non-invasive are used to specify the method of treating cardiac patient, whether surgical or non-surgical, in a simple terms, for the patient understanding whether they have to go for a surgery or an invasive procedure is used. That to invade the body and to do any procedure is invasive. Non-invasive is just like outside the body. You should not have anything inside the body. You should be able to do the treatment but providing everything outside the body. So that's the difference between invasive and non-invasive. So when you talk about invasive, the first thing you to come to is an angioplasty. Angioplasty is an invasive procedure because they put a catheter into your femoral artery, in your leg artery or in your artery in your arm, and push the catheter slowly into the body, into the coronary artery, and then they inflate the balloon or they dilate the vessel and put a wire mesh called stent. So you know it's invasive. Or a bypass surgery. This is also comes under invasive procedure because it's a cardiac surgery. You have to open the chest and then find out the artery which is obstructed and put the graft across the artery. So it's a surgical procedure. So the surgical procedure and invasive, that angioplasty is called invasive. So the first time the non-invasive option is EECP. So EECP does not involve anything invasive. It is a completely an external procedure where the cuff is placed in the leg and push the blood from the leg towards the heart. So that's the difference between invasive and non-invasive.
Okay, doctor, it's explained very well. And I would like to know who are the most suitable patients should undergo this kind of a EECP new treatment system.
Okay. So this is a good question because when you say who is a suitable person for undergoing this new procedure called EECP, you know, I think science is expanding. There are a lot of new data are coming up. There are a lot of new research, randomized trial, and so many informations are gathered as we go on. So initially when we started EECP in US, it is used for patients who call us no option. So the no option means they are on medical management. Medical management is not sufficient. So they gone for an angiogram and then they did an angioplasty or a bypass surgery. And even after angioplasty and bypass surgery, the patient has not got enough relief. And so they have no other option left because they utilized all the potential treatment available to them. Now, these group are called no option, which is almost 15% in the US population who have cardiac disease. So this no option patients were advised for EECP. That's a basic idea EECP is introduced. But as from 1999 to 2017, for past one decade, there are a lot of changes. Now, EECP is also used for patients who are amendable by bypass surgery and angioplasty, but still refuse to undergo the procedure. I mean, I believe it's a very, very huge population in India, and probably in US and most of our Asian countries, going for a surgery sometimes is religious or sometimes the personals won't believe. They don't want to have their body cut open to do any procedure. So in this group of patients in India, we implemented EECP as another option. And then there is another group, they say they don't even want to go for an angiogram to find out what's happening in the coronary artery, but they are symptomatic. So these group of patients also, EECP as a first option. So if you have a medical management and medical management is insufficient to control your symptoms, and then EECP could be a first line option for you before you start proceeding for a bypass and angioplasty. That's a new trend which is we are trying to do, and a lot of data are coming for it.
Yeah, doctor, you several times you have used the word called the medical management.
Yes.
Can you tell it in a simple words? What is medical management of a heart patient?
Yes. See, in a simple way, when you have a chest pain, now you visit a physician or a cardiologist, just explaining the symptom that you have a chest pain. Now the first thing your physician is going to do is he's going to evaluate you with a lot of tests like a treadmill or a ECG or a echocardiography. These are the basic modality available to assess your cardiac function and your cardiovascular system. Once they know that you have a problem with your heart or there is a blockage in your coronary vessel, then they start prescribing you some medications. These medications varies from a simple nitrate medication. which can dilate the vessel, or it can go for a beta blocker, AC inhibitor, angiotensin receptor blocker, and calcium channel blocker. There are various group of drugs are available, and all these drugs are prescribed to improve your quality of life, reduce your chest pain, increase your walking distance, prevent you for getting a heart attack, and prolong your life. So this is a first line of defense against heart disease, and this is called medical management.
Right, doctor, I have heard there are some patients, even though they are tested with a angiogram, right, no main arteries are blocked, but still they are getting the chest pain. That means that particular disease is called the microvascular disease. So, how this treatment will be helpful for such kind of a microvascular disease patients?
Yes, you are very correct. I think many times when we do an angiogram in a patient with chest pain and expecting to find obstruction in the coronary artery, but in fact the coronary arteries are very clear and we call them as normal with no obstruction which is limiting the flow. In that case, then still the patient is having chest pain. So some of the reason why the patient is getting chest pain in spite of having normal coronaries, we call as microvascular angina or microvascular disease, or it is called cardiac X syndrome. This is a condition which is more prevalent in female population, and the coronary's main vessels are normal and they have a problem in their microcirculation. So what happens is the microcirculations are minute vessels, which is millions, which is present in your heart muscle. This carries the blood supply to the heart muscle. So the main vessel is normal, but the micro vessel which is actually carrying the blood supply to the heart muscle is abnormal or it is constricted. So this condition, the patient may not benefit by bypass surgery or angioplasty because the main vessels are normal. There is nothing to graft or stent. So in this case, the only possible treatment which can able to increase your collateral circulation is EECP.
Yes, that explained very well, doctor. And I have read lot about this EECP treatment system. So I have slight idea about the stable angina and also about the unstable angina. And EECP treatment system is more suitable as I knew, right, it is for stable angina. So, can you explain what is this stable angina and the unstable angina, why this treatment is more suitable for the stable angina patients with the stable angina? Can you explain it?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very keen clinical question. So, the differentiation between stable and unstable angina is of a profound importance because the physician should be able to identify a stable from unstable because your whole management for heart disease is completely different from stable and unstable. And it is unfortunate that many patients don't understand the concept of stable and unstable. So the indication whether the angioplasty should be done or not is actually shrouded with mystery because ideally they don't understand clearly between the distinction between stable and unstable. Now let me take stable angina. Now stable anginal patients are patients who usually goes walking around with clinics to clinics or multiple consultation with a cardiologist for chest pain. So they are able to walk, they are stable, they are doing fine. So if you ask the symptom is usually a chest pain. So the chest pain is usually happens when they do some work, extra works. Like for example, they keep saying, doctor, I'm fine, but I get chest pain when I start walking more distance or when I get emotional or when I take bath, routine activities which I do before, now I'm not able to do because of chest pain. And usually 100% this chest pain is very short-lived and it stops when you stopping your activities. Or to take a nitrate. Nitrate are the vasodilators. Usually as a medication it's prescribed. So the patient gives a clear symptom of chest pain for a long period of time which is short-lived, which is relieved on rest or taking a sorbitrate and which comes on the exertional level when they exert themselves. So this is called stable. So the patient can go to the clinic as outpatient. Now the second group is called unstable. So unstable is the patient, you don't find them on the clinic or outpatient coming for consultant, you will be finding him in the hospital in the admission. So we call it as a simple way to understand is stable means they are vertical, they are walking. Unstable means horizontal. They just go to the hospital in a stretcher. Now what is unstable angina? That means they have chest pain similar to the stable, but the chest pain is for a longer duration of time, and the chest pain does not relieve with nitrate or relieve with rest. Even when the patient rests, the pain continues. So basically the unstable angina, your heart is telling you or is warning you an impending heart attack. So if you don't treat the unstable angina then and there, if you don't treat the blockage which is causing this unstable angina, then your chances of getting a heart attack is very high, your death is high. So all this adverse effect is very high in unstable angina. So this is a distinction. So when you treat unstable angina, the management strategy is completely different. When you treat the stable angina, your management strategy is completely different.
Yeah, then how can you explain that for the stable angina, the medical management is available, and also at the same time this is ECP treatment also do a massive job on stable angina. Why a patient should select ECP rather than going for a medical management?
Okay. So why they should choose ECP or medical management or angioplasty in a stable angina?
Stable angina.
Yes. Now, as I said before, what is stable angina?
Yes.
Now, the treatment for stable angina initially is medical management. So if you are on a medical management, as I said, you are given a lot of pills to take, and this pills is not relieving your chest pain or quality of life, then you go for an angiogram, and then you are advised for an angioplasty or a bypass surgery or ECP. This is a trend. Now what is happening is many times patients who have been advised for an angioplasty and bypass surgery in a stable anginal patient, they would not like to go for it and they want to look for another remedy. Now the question is, you clearly said, if you are a patient, have a coronary artery disease, now I want to defer a bypass or angioplasty, I want to choose an ECP. The simple question usually comes to your mind is, doctor, I want to avoid my surgery, but would that put me under risk of a death, or it does going to reduce my survival? So to answer this, now 80% of the interventional procedures, whether it is a bypass surgery or angioplasty, is done on a chronic stable anginal patient. But currently, while I am talking to you today, there is no clear-cut evidence of doing an angioplasty or a bypass surgery in this chronic stable anginal patient to improve your survival and to prevent your heart attack. So basically, in chronic stable anginal patient, all this high-risk procedure can only able to provide one thing, which is quality of life.
Yes.
So now when you put this exact fact to a patient and ask them, we are going to provide you a array of a large number of treatments. Your choices are angioplasty, bypass surgery and ECP, because your medical management is not sufficient. Now all these procedures are going to give you only one thing, quality of life improvement. And which one would you choose? Would you choose a bypass and angioplasty which involve a lot of risk and procedural mortality, or a ECP which is absolutely a non-invasive procedure? Now that's why you're answering a question. So in stable patient, providing ECP would be an equivalent option like a bypass and angioplasty to relieve your chest pain and improve your quality of life. And none of these procedures have shown to protect your heart against myocardial infarction, heart attack, or prolong your life. But in fact, ECP is a very conservative and a natural treatment which have also shown to reduce your rehospitalization and death rate in many studies. So I would try to choose a very less non-invasive treatment which provides the same benefit as a bypass and angioplasty over ECP over the bypass and angioplasty.
Okay, doctor, it's very clear now. And the next question, actually there are some patients, they already have undergone a bypass or angioplasty. Then the second time also the chest pains are come. At that time, is there any possibility to cure that patient who has undergone the bypass surgery for first time or second time? Then the last option is very risky. Yes. By that time, Is there any possibility to treat with this ECP treatment system?
Yes, I mean that's the first idea. I mean ECP was introduced into the system of cardiovascular disease management system for treating these kind of no option patients, because you clearly said initially they might have been on a medical pills, then it is not sufficient, they went for a bypass surgery, angioplasty, and now they are come back again with symptoms. Now why they come back again with symptoms is probably they might have the stent which is placed inside might have closed, which is called stent occlusion. It is not something like very rare. It happens even when you put a drug-eluting stent, around 5 to 7% chances of this stent being closed. And now again going to a bypass surgery, they put a graft. The patient again got symptom because the graft which they placed might have closed. So now the basic thing all the patients should understand is treating a patient with cardiac disease with a bypass or angioplasty or ECP, all are not a curative treatment. So once they undergo this procedure, many patients expect, oh, I have gone for a treatment and it is cured, so I might not get it again. It's basically improve your blood circulation to prevent a heart attack. So again, your disease is actually forming obstructions. That why you form obstruction when other patient doesn't form obstruction is a genetic predisposition or a risk factor which is within you. Thus it's not cured. Yeah. So it can often have. So it's very normal to see a patient with a bypass surgery and angioplasty coming back with symptoms. So for them again going for a bypass and angioplasty increase the risk twice than before. So in this group of patients, they don't have an option to choose. ECP is the only best option available to them.
Yeah, that is also nicely explained, doctor. Then very recently there was a trial called Orbita. Yes. That Orbita trial was a huge ha-ho around the cardiologist community around the world. Can you little bit explain about this trial and its outcomes, which may important to our patients community?
Good. I mean, the Orbita trial is a root shock for the entire cardiology society. The reason is, as we are all discussing about the various options, I keep saying one thing again and again. Having an angioplasty might not protect you against a future heart attack or prolong your life in patient with chronic stable angina. But I did add up, it will improve the quality of life. So angioplasty would improve a quality of life is an assumption we had from 1970s, from the invention of angioplasty. Because it's a logical thinking that we thought, if you open the vessel, the blood flow will restore, so the patient quality of life will improve, chest pain will reduce. Now, this is considered to be a accepted fact in cardiology. So far, nobody has questioned this fact that whether angioplasty can reduce your chest pain or not. It's an accepted fact. And this Orbita trial actually questioned this very basic acceptance. What they did is they randomized, they are what we call as a randomized controlled trial, placebo controlled trial. So what they did is they took two groups of patients. Both the patients who have been advised for an angioplasty. So one group, they went to the cath lab or a catheterization laboratory where they put a catheter and they placed a stent. The second group, they took a cath lab, they introduced the catheter into the body, but they didn't place the stent. Okay. So it's called placebo. They didn't treat, but they acted as if they treated. Yes. And the patient and the physician who follow them all think that patient has been treated with a stent because nobody knows. It's blinded. Yes. It's a placebo, it's blinded. Then they followed up for a couple of weeks, I think 6 weeks they followed it up. And what they want to do is they compare both the group exercise tolerance, chest pain and quality of life. Assumption is the patient who have undergone active stenting should have a better quality of life, improved exercise tolerance and less chest pain. In fact, they found out to the contrary, both the group the symptom remains the same, walking distance remains the same and quality of life remains the same. So it's very shocking to say angioplasty in chronic stable angina finally would not even reduce the quality of life. It's like a nail in the coffin, the last nail in the coffin. And now the problem is, why do we do angioplasty with a patient with chronic stable angina? We have nothing to say. It cannot reduce the chance of heart attack, it cannot increase your survival, and it cannot decrease your chest pain, it cannot improve your quality of life. So that's the shocking news that Orbiter trial has created, and there are a lot of debate going on. I mean, a lot of controversies also there in the study design and the patient selection. But I think in 2018 we should wait for the recommendation committee to say what they're going to say on the angioplasty on chronic stable angina.
Yes, doctor. Now, again, I would like to ask this question again to more symbolize this situation. You are trying to tell that even for the stable angina, even for the unstable angina, the ECP is the best solution. So, when a patient should decide whether to go for a ECP or for a stent, that means a patient need not to go for a stent, or what sort of a idea you are exactly trying to tell?
I think you got now. It's a good question, but I will be very clear. Now, all the time you are talking about stable angina. When you go for an unstable angina, which the symptoms I explained before, in unstable angina, the evidence that putting a stent on an artery, which is called as a primary angioplasty, the patient is in pain, you took it to the cath lab and you put a catheter and stent in. So there, angioplasty is life-saving. If you are not done angioplasty, then I could say confidently the angioplasty would reduce his chest pain, quality of life, decrease his chance of getting another heart attack, and prolong his life. It's all are yes in an unstable angina. But it is a stable angina, the problem is open. Still nobody can strongly say like I can do an angioplasty and I can prolong your life. It's absolutely, there is no data for it. It is very difficult to believe, but the data and the science, the evidence-based medicine says that. So as a trial, there are a lot of other trials like Courage, and then there is a Barry 2D, an Orbiter. All has done a trial in stable patient, and they clearly showed the effect of angioplasty in chronic stable angina should be further evaluated. It's not conclusive yet.
Okay. Then there is another big issue for these patients with angina. Sometimes they messed up with the gastritis pains. How a patient can understand or diagnose whether the patient is having a chest pain or a gastritis pain?
See, it's a very important question, because many times the gastritis and chest pain, both of them are very similar. Both of them are a burning sensation in your chest area, but there are some small things you can able to differentiate this anginal pain with gastritic pain. So usually anginal pain is short-lived, and it starts slowly and goes to the peak intensity, and when you stop walking, immediately it drops, the pain is gone. So usually anginal pain are 2 to 3 minutes. Contrary to the gastric pain, usually it is longer, because it's an acid which is come back to your esophagus. So when this acid regurgitated in the esophagus, you have the burning sensation, doesn't subside for a long period of time. But again, when you give a nitrate, both subside.
Both subsides?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So what we do is, if somebody walking with a typical, we call it as a atypical chest pain. We don't know if this is a chest pain, but we call it atypical. If you have all high risk factor, let's say you are a smoker, obese guy, coming with uncontrolled diabetes, high cholesterol, with a strong family history of heart disease in your family, coming up with a gasping pain in your chest, I think we have to rule out angina by doing a simple ECG and echo, and then we may treat for a gastritis. So it's basically depend upon your risk factor, how risk group you are, and then do investigation. And if you are a young guy with no risk factor, I may just ask about your food plan, and probably it's a gastric, and we can give antacid.
Okay, doctor. At last, as a summary of all these facts, for about this new technology, ECP treatment technology, as a summary, what can you tell to the whole community?
See, I think the scenario is changing. Initially, people think invasive procedures are more effective than non-invasive procedure. But I think now there are more evidence to show a conservative management by utilizing medications and ECP for patients with chronic stable angina would have a profound importance, because it's going to be cost effective and it is able to provide the much more effect of quality of life to the patient, and without pushing the patient to the high risk procedure. So it could be like a policy decision by the governments to make sure these type of non-invasive treatments are promoted. So thousands and thousands of these patients who are being posted for a intervention which might not have much benefit to them can able to avoid and can able to take EECP as an option.
Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.